ವಂಕಕ್ಕೂ ಗೊತ್ತು ಬಿಸಿಲಿಗೆ ಒಣಗಿದ ಗಂಟಲು ಬಾಯೆನ್ನುವ ಹೊತ್ತು ನಿನ್ನ ಕರುಳು ಕರಗಿ ಜೀವಧಾರೆ ಹರಿದಿ.
Good evening, friends. The Right Circle welcome note. Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone on this, it says rainy evening, but fortunately it's not been that rainy today. I, Ina Puri, Essas woman of Gurugram, welcome you to yet another exclusive version of the Right Circle, a prized initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation from the city of Techno Hub, Gurugram. Regular sessions of the Right Circle are conducted where words weave dreams of their own and tales from each become bridges to new worlds for some of us. Today's session is in association with Radisson Blu with the support of Essas Women of Gurugram. The media partner for today's event is Dainik Jagaran. It's an honor to have Neerja Chowdhury this evening in our midst. She is, of course, a very, very well-known person in her own right. We will be in conversation with her later in the evening. I'm sure all of us are very excited to hear her, but before that, let me take a couple of minutes to talk about the foundation itself, Prabha Khaitan Foundation. This is a non-profitable trust based in Kolkata and was founded by the multi-talented, eminent literature, cultural activist, revolutionist, late Dr. Prabha Khaitan. Her vision of working for a better tomorrow is embodied in her famous words, Karma hi Jeevan hai, work is life. It is also committed to promoting performing arts, culture, education, literature, gender equality and women's empowerment through authors' meets, book launches, literature fests for veterans and children authors, panel discussions, boutique festivals and theatre performers. Authors and artists connect with their niche audience through events under the auspices of its various initiatives like the Right Circle, Kalam, Kitab, Ek Mulakat, Tetati, Saz or Saz, Sur or Saz, Akhar, Lafz, Muskan, amongst others. Music to us is an important art form and it is of vital importance. Ricky Cage has conceptualized and curated 12 pieces of music to be used as music of the month and has composed the anthem for Prabha Khaitan Foundation's Music of the Month for September. It is titled Kaveri. The Kannada song talks about the river Kaveri that is born in the Green Mountains, bathes us in her beauty, provides warmth and soothes our troubled minds with her flowing waters. She is home to millions and yet we destroy her, steal from her and pollute her existence. She is the mother we pretend to love. Now it's my utmost pleasure to introduce our guest, Neerja Chowdhury. Neerja Chowdhury is an award-winning journalist, columnist and political commentator. In the course of a distinguished career of over 40 years, she was political editor of the Indian Express for 10 years and covered the terms of 8 prime ministers and 10 Lok Sabha elections. She has won several prestigious awards for her journalism, including the first Chameli Devi Jain Award for Outstanding Women Media Persons in 81, the India Today PUCL Journalism for Human Rights Award in 1983, and the Prem Bhatia Award for Best Political Reporting in 2009-10. She is contributing editor, the Indian Express, and her weekly column, the Neerja Chowdhury column, is widely followed by participants and observers of contemporary Indian politics. In conversation today, we have Chandni Chopra, a writer, poet, nutritionist, and Essas woman of Agra. She is not only a multifaceted professional, but a literary buff. Now, I will let you to sit back and enjoy the conversation. Over to Chandni. Neerja ji.
A very good evening to everybody. Neerja ji, such an honor to be sitting here with you and to have had this honor of having a conversation with you. I want to begin by stating the obvious. You've had a prolific career, and a career such as yours needs intense passion because it's brave, it's competitive, and it's cutthroat. So please take us a bit behind the scenes into your foray into journalism. What was it? What was it that really motivated you to kind of get onto this path? And it's been 40 years since, and you're still at it. So what's the reason behind that passion?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me. It's a real privilege to be invited by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. I've heard a lot about the foundation, and all of you are professionals who I would like to chat with individually. And I hope I'll have the opportunity to do that, to find out more about what each one of you is doing, more about what the foundation is doing, and look at ways of collaborating in areas. To answer your question, I strayed into journalism accidentally. I studied architecture at the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi, and I left it halfway because I met Rajmohan Gandhi, Gandhiji's grandson, who was running an organization. He talked about changing India at that time, changing society. And I was in college and was really felt that's what I wanted to use my life for. So I gave 12 years working full time and traveling all over the country, staying in homes of people, the very wealthy, as well as sleeping on the benches in colleges in Kerala. So it was a varied experience of learning about India, what India was like. And then I, as I say, came back on the conveyor belt. And to get back on the conveyor belt was not easy. So I got a job at the Press Institute, उस समय 500 रुपए का था. And then graduated to 750 rupees, and then finally I joined the Statesman as the civil rights correspondent. I think I was the first and the only civil rights correspondent, and I was there. And during my civil rights writing, I would travel again a lot, wrote about all kinds of issues like child labor, under trials in jails who, cases had not been initiated against, even though they were languishing in jails for 30 and more years. And I remember following up one person. I'd read a little item in one of the Hindi papers about this fellow called Rudal Shah, who was in Muzaffarpur jail, and he had come out and he didn't know where to go after 33 years of incarceration. So I decided to go and chase up this story. And it was monsoon time, and I remember, Bihar ke Nale or raat ke 8:30 baje I reached his village and found, got his story, and then I wrote about it, and this became a PIL. At that time, Justice B.N. Bhagwati was Chief Justice, and he had initiated this process of people filing PILs, public interest litigation. Ab to bahut politicized ho gaye hain. And this was the first case of compensation given to an under trial in a case like this, and done by the father of the present Chief Justice of India. So it was a landmark judgment. And then I wrote about bonded labor, that went to court and so on. It was very fascinating. So 6 years I did that, and then I slowly discovered that politics is everywhere. You cannot get away from it. That is what you need to understand. Then I joined the Indian Express and I started to work on political writing. Vishwanath Pratap Singh was on the rise at that time, and I covered him intensively, I would say on an hourly basis, and traveled everywhere. And then of course he became Prime Minister of India. So then from then onwards, my journey was political writing. Different prime ministers, different political parties, elections, traveling. And what I find most fascinating is to discover India. I realize, every time elections take place, we hit the road. You realize how little you know of the country, how the country changes every 20 kilometers, the language changes, the habits change, food changes, way of thinking. It's such a diverse country. I don't think, I've traveled many countries, but I don't think there's a country as diverse as India. And the magic of it holding together, and the magic of it being a democracy, faulty democracy, but still, it's something that makes you proud, really.
You call it the Great Nautanki. I read on your Twitter handle.
It is a great Nautanki. And there's not a dull moment. So, in that sense, I've been very fortunate. And this is my first book. And I must say, some of you know David Devdar, who's the head of Aleph Book Company, who has published this book. When I talked to him, the idea was in my mind for a while, and when I just drove in and met him, and he immediately, he believed in this book more than even I did. And as I've said in the book, and he set a punishing schedule for me to finish it.
That's exactly what I was curious about, that I'm sure with a career like yours, you had a plethora of stories that you could have written on. Why did you particularly choose this theme about how prime ministers decide? It's a very intriguing theme, and there are so many books that have been controversial and that have been written about power figures in the past. And you could have chosen any topic. Why particularly this? Like, what hit the chord for you?
As I did political coverage, I realized the real picture was not known to ordinary people. How decisions were getting made, but the true story, the inside story, you and I didn't know. What really went on behind the scenes. The pulls, the pressures, the machinations, the manipulation, stabbing in the back, survival instinct, somehow getting the better of opponents, retaining power. And the other thing I must say this, when I thought of writing a book like this, I wanted to write for the millennials. I knew for people like me it'll be a journey down memory lane, but I really wanted the younger people to read. And I wanted to write it in a way that politics gets played out. Drama, suspense. It's not beautiful prose at all. There's nothing beautiful about it. Of course, there are flashes of wisdom and high points, and there is the very human side of prime ministers and politicians.
But it's extremely beautiful storytelling, if I must add, because as a millennial myself, there are political figures that I've just known through hearsay from my grandparents or say my parents, and to read about them firsthand, it was more storytelling. And for me, there were various instances where I had to stop and remind myself that they're real figures that I'm dealing with and it's not just a story. So it's beautifully written in that context. What I also want to add is that you are dealing with people of extreme power here. So was it difficult at any point to bring to light a few instances? Was there a particular incident that, probably which was controversial and you wanted to talk about it, but you couldn't because of reasons known and unknown?
So you're asking about things I've left out?
Yes.
Yes. There are things that are, there are stories, but they don't go to the extent or they don't capture everything that I know. And the reason, of course, is legal implication. Yes. Of course, they are corroborated. It's not that they didn't happen. And the reason why, it's not a question you've asked, but one of the reasons why I've chosen these 6 prime ministers is because I talked to those around them after they demitted power. Therefore, people were much more willing to talk to me after the prime minister is no longer in the saddle. I left out Mr. Modi, the incumbent prime minister, even though I started working on it, on one of the decisions, because I felt I would not do justice and that not enough people were willing to talk to me freely while he's still in power. And it's fair because the others had talked to me also after the prime minister demitted power. So I decided to leave that for the future. Of course, people ask me why didn't I take Jawaharlal Nehru. Even, the thumb rule I used was prime ministers who had completed their term. The only exception was VP Singh, because I feel he changed the face of India, even though he was in power for 11 months. Nehru, Modi, I've just told you why I've left out. Nehru, I felt my own political consciousness started after Nehru, and whatever I would do would be a cut and paste job. So for that reason, I left Nehru.
So these 6 prime ministers basically stood out for you. That's the reason you chose to add them. But also I'm sure that, the decisions that you've covered, every chapter has the potential to be a book in itself. So how was the skimming process for you? How did you derive at, what was your selection process when you were writing about a particular decision attributed to a particular prime minister? So what was the decision-making process behind that? I mean, it must have been difficult because there's so much more that you could have spoken about or you could have chosen to add.
I chose decisions whose impact was felt after the terms of the prime ministers. It was a long-term impact. Now, Indira Gandhi is the only one where I did not choose a decision, or partly a decision, why she went in for the 1977 elections. She was firmly in the saddle. She need not have gone for elections to undo the emergency. Economy was doing well, and therefore why did she go in for it? It's a issue that tantalizes experts, observers even today. That debate still continues. Why did she go in for election? So I wanted to look at that. But what fascinated me about Indira Gandhi, of course there was Bangladesh, there was emergency, the big decisions, but enough had been written. What fascinated me was how did she come back to power in 33 months? And she'd been routed all over North India. In her own seat, Sanjay Gandhi had lost. And I don't think any other leader worldwide had come back to power in such a short time. So that fascinated me. And what it led me is to conclude that the Sam Dam Dand Bhed, the real politic of which she was a master and which she deployed to such great effect to come back to power, you can call it moral degeneration, you can call it power for the sake of power. Generations of politicians who followed her across the political divide consider Indira Gandhi as their mentor. VP Singh to openly bolte the. She is my mentor. And before Narendra Modi came to power, one of the people in his setup has said, you think, he has studied Indira Gandhi very minutely. How she became larger than her party, how she became a mass leader, how she got the better of her opponents. So I was fascinated in looking at this aspect of her politics. So for her, this is what I've chosen. For Rajiv Gandhi, the fallout of the Shah Banu judgment, the Muslim Women Bill, opening the Lokshet Babri Masjid, Ram Janmabhoomi disputed structure, that is what I've looked at. VP Singh, of course, adoption of the Mandal Commission report, which, as I said, changed politics. PV Narasimha Rao, the non-decision allowing the Babri Masjid to be demolished. That debate continues.
Yeah. Because indecision is also a decision. So I think that's precisely what you've covered in his case.
And Vajpayee, the nuclear test, and Manmohan Singh, the Indo-US nuclear deal. Yes. Those are the specific decisions I've looked at.
Coming back to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, I think she's one prime minister that fascinates all of us to date. And when I was reading her account, what I could not miss but notice was that from time to time, the mother in her surfaced, right? And so do you think that her political sensibilities were compromised because the emotions took over from time to time? Because as we see in her case, whether it was the rise and fall, Sanjay Gandhi has been attributed greatly behind her story and the way she kind of maneuvered her political abilities. So could you just shed light on that? Do you think that it was that, or was it accumulation of a lot of other things?
Two parts to your question. I'd like to agree with you that, I was recently in a village in Satara district in Maharashtra. And there was a chat going on, interaction with young girls, about 17, 18, 19-year-olds, studying in college. And I often ask them, who's your favorite prime minister? Or have you heard of this prime minister? That is also very fascinating to me, who they've heard of, younger people, and who they've not heard of. So I asked them, I said, who's your favorite prime minister? In one voice, 20 ladkiyan wahan hain, Indira Gandhi. Now I was quite surprised. This is 4 decades down the line. And they find, of course, partly, I also find Indira Gandhi very fascinating. Partly because she's a woman prime minister, partly how she got the better of her opponents domestically, internationally. This is very fascinating to me. But I agree that Indira Gandhi is a fascinating prime minister. And I must also admit that Indira Gandhi is the one prime minister I did not cover, professionally. But it's the one chapter I enjoyed writing the most. And it's a chapter that's most commented upon and read. So, but coming to your second part of your question about the mother in her, yes, she was grooming Sanjay. She allowed Sanjay Gandhi a free hand during the emergency, and he was the super villain, the extra constitutional authority. All this we've read about, and I've also documented. And the reason why she went in for the elections in 77 was also Sanjay. There were very many factors that many people say the Democrat in her triumphed over she was more Nehru's daughter than Sanjay's mother. That's what they'd like to believe. Or the spiritual factors, made her feel that she had to go in for elections. Or there were people like Vinoba Bhave, CPI, those who were putting pressure on her to go for elections, or the opposition people she had won over. There are many factors. But essentially, I concluded that it was Sanjay. She wanted to legitimize the emergency. She wanted to prepare him as her successor. And she wanted to ready a team for him. And that's the reason why she went in for it. But one story that I have got here, and when she lost power, she turned very religious. She must have visited every single major temple in the country. And the reason was that she was afraid for Sanjay. The Paramacharya of Kanchi, the Baba Devraha. She supported institutions and mandirs, and that was one of the reasons why the RSS began to look at her as the Hindu Chera. Somebody they wanted to back, and they collaborated with her, and she got them to back the emergency. That's another very fascinating story. But coming to when Sanjay died, she was supposed to, or when she came to power in 1980, early 1980, she had wanted to go to Chamunda Devi. Chamunda was a Devi, this is in Mandir in Himachal, Palampur, and she believed in. And she would send lifafa of money every month, and the prasad would come to her. So when she won, it was decided that she would go. And she decided to go in June of that year. And she was to arrive there on the 22nd, and for puja to be done on the 23rd, but she gave the mandir at miss. She decided to fly from Jammu directly back to Delhi. Now the Pandit at the Chamunda Mandir was very angry. He said, ordinary people, when they don't come to Chamunda, the goddess Devi forgives them. आम आदमी जब नहीं आते माफ कर देती है, लेकिन जब रूलर नहीं आता है तो माँ कभी माफ नहीं करती है. So the people who'd gone on her behalf, the Mohan Meakin company, liquor company that produced Old Monk, they were very close to Indira Gandhi, so they were working on this visit of hers. And they were there. So they did the puja the next day, 23rd morning, and they were coming back to Delhi. 50 mile dur, they got the news that Sanjay's plane had crashed that day. And so they rushed to Delhi, reached at 2:30 a.m. At her home, she was with the body, and she came to them and asked, "Is it because I didn't go to Chamunda?" Now, 6 months later, she went to Chamunda. And that very Pandit's hand shook as he did the puja. Because every bit of puja that she did, the mudras, Kali ki mudra, the matha tekna, everything was just to perfection. And she wept and wept and wept. And then she went out and took the prasad, did the parikrama, and she planted trees, which it was Sanjay's 5-point program. And that evening when she came back to Delhi, there was a function she had to go to. And at that function, she called Rajiv Gandhi to the stage and introduced him to the crowd. So all those, the politicos sitting in the audience made a mental note of it. But Indira Gandhi, she prevented Sanjay from becoming chief minister when she won in 1980. He wanted to become chief minister of UP. She said no. And it's the first time she said no to him. And she said, I want him in Delhi. And though I haven't put this in the book, the buzz at that time was that she would move to Rashtrapati Bhavan in 1982 and Sanjay would take over. But that was not to be.
Also in Indira Gandhi's case, there were rumors that she's going to probably take a backseat from politics after Sanjay Gandhi's demise. But that did not happen. She continued with the political journey. And I think that is something, even with the political strategy, you mentioned Sam, Dam, Dhan, Bhed, and which is very similar to what our current Prime Minister also kind of adheres by. So when we look at Mr. Modi's journey, what do you think are the similarities or dissimilarities in the way they're functioning and in the way they're running the country?
With all the Prime Ministers?
No, only with Mrs. Indira Gandhi.
Only with Mrs. Gandhi. The similarities, are quite obvious in that sense. And they would be because certain things kick in when you have a powerful, strong Prime Minister with a brute majority, which Mr. Modi has, and which Indira Gandhi had. In 1980, she got 353 seats, which was one more than she had got at the peak of her career. When the year the Bangladesh came into being, elections were held before that. So she was a powerful Prime Minister. As I said, she reached out beyond the party. She could win elections of her own steam. She could win elections for her party people. She ruled through the PMO. So the similarities are there. Of course, I've quoted Karan Singh, by the way, in my epilogue to say that Mr. Modi will never admit this, but he suspects that he would like to be like Jawaharlal Nehru and to surpass him. And Karan Singh, of course, as we know, has worked with every Prime Minister and worked closely with every Prime Minister. So there are people who liken Mr. Modi to Indira Gandhi for a variety of reasons, and somebody like Karan Singh who says that he would like to, for all the, the BJP and the RSS dismissing Jawaharlal Nehru. By the way, today the Prime Minister was very conciliatory in Parliament, and he spoke about 75 years of Parliament, and he praised the contributions of Mr. Nehru, Shastri, Indira Gandhi, all of them today. So whether he, and by the way, if you go to the Prime Minister's Museum, as you enter the reception area, you have all the Prime Ministers you see, in the wall in front of you. There are two Prime Ministers just above the entrance door, Nehru and Modi.
Wow. There's also another key figure that's come out during your writing, which is Arun Nehru. He's been very pivotal in a lot of decisions taken by Rahul Gandhi. So could you take us into that space? Was he pivotal in Rahul Gandhi's foray into politics? what was his role behind that? Because he entered politics, I don't think so it was Rajiv Gandhi. I don't think so it was a conscious decision. He was kind of made to enter because of the circumstances. So how was Arun Nehru pivotal in that journey?
You know, when Indira Gandhi won from two constituencies in 1980, Medak and Raebareli, she decided to retain Medak and give up Raebareli. So then the family were thinking of who to have in Raebareli. There was Muhammad Yunus, who was a family friend, so some people suggested, why not him? Mrs. Gandhi was very clear. It had to be someone from the family. So then Menaka Gandhi apparently suggested, why not Fatty? Arun Nehru was a third cousin of Rajiv Gandhi. And he was in a paint company heading a multinational in Calcutta. So they got him to come, and he fought the election and won it very handsomely. And I think Indira Gandhi was looking for somebody who would be close to Rajiv, who would, you know, prepare a team, would be a confidant of hers. And Arun Nehru she groomed, and Arun Nehru slipped into this role very well. So between 1980 and 1984, when she was assassinated, he had become a very powerful figure and part of the Rajiv team. Now, 1984, with the day she died, Rajiv was campaigning in Bengal. And when the news reached, and Pranab Mukherjee was with him, and some other Congress leaders were with him, and they got word and they flew back. By that time, of course, she was no more. But Arun Nehru had immediately got into the act. And he wanted to ensure it was not Pranab Mukherjee who became even an interim prime minister, because he knew he was too savvy. Once he became interim also, it would be very difficult to dislodge him. And he wanted his cousin to be there. Now, Rajiv was a very charming, easygoing, people felt pliant. So Nehru may have thought that he would be able to control things if Rajiv was there. So he even brought around Zail Singh. There was disquiet for some hours कि Zail Singh उनको swearing in कराएंगे कि नहीं. He was abroad. So Nehru wanted R. Venkatraman, who was the vice president. He got him to come to AIIMS, that this swearing will be done immediately. But then Rajiv himself ruled that out. But that evening at 7 o'clock, Rajiv was sworn in. But at 6 o'clock, P.V. Narasimha Rao, who was the Home Minister of India, by this time anti-Sikh violence had started, even outside All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And different parts of the city in Delhi, there were reports. And he called up Narasimha Rao, Arun Nehru, and asked him to back off. Everything he said, information they got, should be sent to the Prime Minister's office, and the Prime Minister's office would deal with it. So those 45 minutes when the army could have been called and the problem nipped in the bud, it was Nelly Narasimha Rao in charge as the Home Minister of India. The new Prime Minister hadn't even taken over. But Narasimha Rao took a back step. And of course, later when all the commissions went into the violence, nobody even remembered who the Home Minister of India was. It was Rajiv Gandhi who was blamed for the violence that happened. And then on 31st October 1984, Nehru moved in a way with the senior leadership of the Congress at AIIMS to ensure that it was Rajiv who was sworn in as the Prime Minister that evening. So, and he was the most powerful. He got a Minister of State for for power initially. This is not a very powerful position, but he was called the de facto PM, the most powerful figure after Rajiv in that government for the first 7-8 months, and then they started to fall out. So Arun Nehru has played a very pivotal role in Rajiv's premiership in the initial months.
When we mention about Rajiv Gandhi, you've also mentioned that he fell between two stools. So why do you say that? Do you think that his secular ideology got the better of him, or he undermined the religious sentiments of people in India?
I think Rajiv was very well-meaning. He wanted to break new ground. And I remember it was like a breath of fresh air. Suddenly, you know, after all the stagnation of months, Punjab on the boil, Kashmir on the boil, then Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, then the anti-Sikh violence, and it was a very depressed country. And suddenly he becomes Prime Minister, and is then, in October he becomes Prime Minister, December he is elected again with an unprecedented majority of 414 Lok Sabha seats, never clocked by anybody else. And he gets, you know, he gets going. He has the Assam Accord, the Punjab Accord, the Mizoram Accord, brings down the voting age to 18, has these technologies. Old, divorced Muslim woman with 5 children whose husband was, you know, had promised her 200 rupees, was not prepared to give, had given her talaq, etc. And she went to court, and this was under the CRPC. And they ruled that 25 rupeya mahina to come to her. And then, of course, the chapter by quoting Sonia Gandhi, Rajiv, if you cannot convince me about the Muslim Women Bill, how are you going to convince the country? But he went ahead with this Muslim Women Bill, and then the Hindus got very agitated. So he went in with a step to balance, which is to open the lock or facilitate the openings of the locks at the Babri Masjid for Hindus to do unfettered worship. There had been a grill put there in 1950, and an idol of Ram Lalla had been put in under the Sanctum Sanctorum of Babri Masjid in 1949 December. And the court had just, you know, given there was an administrative order, not the court. Okay, there'll be a grill and people can worship from outside. So that status quo had prevailed. Now that was opened. Again, you know, it was facilitated. And then the Muslims got very agitated, the Hindus got agitated, and when the elections came, of course Bofors came and a lot of other things came in between, he fell between the two stools. He got neither the votes of the Muslims nor the Hindus. 414 to 197 slump. Only because of this. And that story, you know, once the doors of the locks were opened at the masjid, that is the beginning of the politics of the BJP that followed for 3 decades after that.
Wow.
And they had tasted blood.
You've also mentioned that VP Singh in his brief tenure has changed the face of Indian politics. So do you think that the actions that he took were conscious and he kind of knew the magnitude of impact that it's going to have on politics for years to come?
I think, you know, he did it to save his government because he was having trouble with Devilal. Devilal, they suspected, would demand the implementation of the Mandal Commission report, which had advocated 27% reservation in government jobs for the OBCs. Now, of course, it was part of the Janata Party manifesto. The rise of the OBCs had started in the 60s, which led to 9 state governments being formed all across North India. It underpinned the support base of the Janata Party led by Morarji Desai in 77, when Indira Gandhi was routed. So there was a rise of the OBCs. They wanted their share in the power structure. And though VP Singh went in for Mandal to save his government, he thought he would save his government because the OBC MPs would remain with him, and he also hoped the OBCs of the Congress would come across to him. So, but I think whether by design or default, he tapped into an aspirational revolution that was taking place amongst the OBCs. He was not the beneficiary. It is leaders who the movement spawned. Mulayam Singh Yadav, Lalu Yadav, Nitish Kumar, Uma Bharti, Shivraj Chauhan, Ashok Gehlot, Vinay Katyar. You can count dozens of them who went on to rule the states of India for the next 25 years. VP Singh himself was not a beneficiary, but he triggered off this process. And he used to often say, "Gol kar diya par tang toot gayi." So of course he went out of power, and that's another story. But that's why I say he started off unleashed forces which changed the face of India. Certainly North India.
When you speak about Mr. Vajpayee's tenure, you speak about the decision that he made of testing nuclear devices. I would want to talk about another story which probably has not been covered, and which is about the IC-814 hijack, because that is an unfortunate incident that happened during his tenure, and he was hugely criticized over the decision that he took. So something like that could not have been easy. So do you have any insight into what went behind that decision?
You know, the families of those people who were hijacked, I remember they were outside RCR. And that was a very difficult, dharna, meetings, naturally worried relatives about what's going to happen to their people. So that exerted an enormous pressure on Mr. Vajpayee. And I think it was always, Jaswant Singh used to talk about it because he went on that plane to taking these people who were released, who had been in prison. It was not an easy decision. It was not an easy decision for them to take, but they took it, and there were consequences of that. But I haven't looked at it, so I'm only telling you what I remember from coverage of that time.
Also, when we talk about Mr. Manmohan Singh, I think he's been one of the most misunderstood prime ministers of all times. So why do you think that is? What went wrong, and why till date there are so many controversies surrounding him?
You know, I had written to him saying I wanted to come and present the book to him, which is about 10, 12 days ago. So I went there, and when I presented it, what he had liked the most, he immediately pointed to it, was the heading of the chapter on him. The underrated Prime Minister who triumphed. He really loved that. So it's what you're saying, he feels certainly is misunderstood. And, but what I have, in pushing through the Indo-US nuclear deal, of course it was meant for clean energy, nuclear commerce that India had been denied because of the sanctions. But it really forged a strategic partnership with the US. Of course, Vajpayee started it. Even before, even Narasimha Rao initiated that process, then Vajpayee took it forward. And of course, in Dr. Manmohan Singh time, that came about. And of course, now Mr. Modi has taken it a step further. And again, 39 long months, Dr. Manmohan Singh did not give up. Yeah. Sonia Gandhi was supposed to be the power behind the throne. On every other decision, she would have had a say. On this one, he got the better of her, he got the better of the left, he managed to break the Samajwadi Party, he managed to win over Amar Singh, the world-class fixer, and other fixers. I mean, what you talk about Sam, Dam, Dandabhen, Dr. Manmohan Singh played every trick in the book. And he managed to get his government to survive. आज भी प्रधानमंत्री ने ये बोला है, cash for vote, cash for this thing, that the confidence motion that he had to face. And they did a sting operation, the BJP fellows who went into parliament to say we had been offered money for our votes. So all that Dr. Manmohan Singh did but did not give up. So there was a side to Dr. Manmohan Singh, a determined side, a politically savvy side, which few people thought he had. Yeah. And he, of course, he had the support of the most powerful man in the world, George Bush, who was on his side. And they became friends, and experts who followed it, at a very closely, different steps in how this deal came about, felt had that chemistry not been there, perhaps when they ran into roadblocks, things might have been difficult. So the personal chemistry between Dr. Manmohan Singh and George Bush was also a factor. But one thing, for the US to contain China, to woo India, as I say, strategic relationship, clean energy, nuclear commerce, wo sab tha. But somewhere behind this decision was a determination by Dr. Manmohan Singh to show I can be my own man. True that. I can assert. But that's the only decision where he really asserted in that fashion. No other decision.
And I think also with Dr. Manmohan Singh, what led to him becoming Prime Minister was the decision of an almost Prime Minister, which was Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. So we've learned that she decided against it because she was prompted by her son Rahul Gandhi to do so. And he made it very clear to his mother that if you go ahead and take up the Prime Ministership, then I'm going to do something drastic. So do you think it was just her son's love, or was there more to it behind this drastic decision that she took and she decided against it?
This is a story told to me by Mr. Natwar Singh, who happened to be there and saw it. Sonia Gandhi had been elected the leader of the Congress Parliamentary Party. She'd accepted to be the leader. The UPA, the allies had also elected her, and she was going to stake her claim. Everybody, I mean, I remember it so clearly. Saturday ko kya hua, Sunday ko kya hua, Monday ko kya hua. And so this happened. Saturday she became the leader of the Congress Parliamentary Party. Sunday evening there was a dinner with all the allies where she was very quiet and where UPA was formed. Monday afternoon, Natwar Singh goes looking for Dr. Manmohan Singh, and he's told he is at 10 Janpat. And because he had access to the family and to the household, the staff said, "Andar jaiye, andar baithe hue hain." So when he went in, there was Sonia Gandhi, there was Dr. Manmohan Singh, there was Suman Dubey, a family friend and a journalist, and there was Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. And Rahul walks in and he says that Meri Dadi ko maar diya, my father was killed, and in 6 months they will kill you. And I give you 24 hours to make up your mind, but if you become Prime Minister, I will do something drastic. And Sonia was distraught, and then they took her inside. Then she went into a meeting. By that time, she had made up her mind, actually. And she went into a meeting, informal meeting of Congress leaders, and told them it will be Manmohan Singh and not her. And then, of course, next day when she went to meet the president, she told him also that, and Dr. Abdul Kalam has documented this in his memoirs, that they had got a letter ready inviting her to form the government. But when she came saying it would not be her but Manmohan Singh, then the letter had to be redone and so on. But to answer your question, yes, the mother in her overpowered the politician in her. I think that is fair to say. And Rahul's threat led to her being accepted by the country, giving up prime ministership. Suppose she had become prime minister. You remember Sushma Swaraj had threatened to tonsure her hair. BJP CMs would not have received her. Vajpayee, she had spoken to Vajpayee 2 days earlier. And she said, "I want your Ashirwad." And he said, "You have my Ashirwad in abundance, but I would advise you not to do it. It will divide the country and it will divide the civil services." And but of course she was going ahead till this Rahul thing happened. And it made her acceptable in the party, and it made her acceptable in the country. And as a result of that decision, I believe she's today the tallest leader in the Congress party. So it's one of those quirks of history and politics, how things actually pan out.
What I also like about the book is that you've brought about a very human side to the politicians. There's this one very common recurring emotion that is of loneliness. So is it really lonely at the top? Because whether we observe in Mrs. Gandhi's case where she says that I want to give up politics and go to the hills and retire, or in Mr. Vajpayee's case where he just wants to write poetry and literally wants nothing more to do. So is it really that lonely at the top, and how is it juxtaposition with the fact that they're into the profession that they are in?
You know, several of the prime ministers I talked to expressed this loneliness. VP Singh expressed it, Chandrasekhar expressed it, Gujral, and of course, as you say, Vajpayee expressed it. While they have, there's nobody as powerful as the Prime Minister. Gujral used to say, even the weakest Prime Minister is very, very powerful. They have everything at their command, people to brief them. As far as you and I are concerned, they can do anything. But they would all say the higher you go, the lonelier it becomes, because the buck stops with you. And the enormity of that millions of lives are going to be affected by the decision you take, is something they have to contend with. Of course, Nehru used that loneliness to write his books in jail. Narendra Modi has really used that loneliness, to political advantage. If you notice, all the photographs of Modi are alone. He comes down Air India 1, there'll be no official, no minister behind. It's him coming down. If you see him before Sardar Patel's statue, it will be alone, Modi. Traveling in a Japanese train, Modi alone. So it is reinforcing, the sense that I'm there for you. Depend on me. So he's used it very effectively, the loneliness at the top. And what people like about him is that there's no family in tow, 24/7 politician, powerful, seen to be working for us. So Indira Gandhi also used, loneliness as a weapon. She would, when people came to see her, she would be very enigmatic and not give off her mind at all. Of course, people used to say she would doodle on the pad while people were talking, but she neither said yes nor no. So you could. But answering your question, yes, prime ministers are as human as anybody, and there is a vulnerable side to them. As I say, there is the underbelly also. And most of the decisions taken by prime ministers have been, according to me, ad hoc in nature and essentially to wrest power or retain power. And very little of looking ahead, what's going to happen as a result of my decision 50 years down the line. There is thinking, it's not that it's not there, but the immediate trigger for that decision has been retention of power for the Prime Minister.
Such an honor to have this conversation with you, and I think we can keep going on with the kind of wealth of knowledge that you have. I mean, this conversation would never end, but it's only fair that I open it up to everybody to ask questions. I'm sure all of you must have something you want to ask and something you want to talk about. So I think we'll open it up for question and answers.
Thank you very much for the wonderful conversation. It was really very interesting. Thank you so much. Mrs. Chowdhury, I wanted to ask you that Mrs. Gandhi, when she was Prime Minister, she came out with wonderful systems to uplift the poor, the nationalization of banks, the taking away of the privy purses, all that was wonderful, which made her win the election in 71. But then, why did she fail? The killings in Assam, the Operation Blue Star, she sort of just, went a bit, well, kind of berserk. That's my first question. The other thing is, the second one is that all prime ministers, I don't know if Modi is so much, but many of the prime ministers, they always worked with a coterie, and so what was the reason for that, actually? And basically two questions. Thank you.
To answer your second question first, every leader would like some group of people around them who they can trust, who will not let them down. And that becomes a coterie. Often that coterie consists not of cabinet colleagues, because cabinet colleagues they will distrust on the whole. They are potential rivals or whatever, they'll trust them only up to a point. Of course, in the case of Narendra Modi, Amit Shah is a trusted person. That's a political jodi. Vajpayee and Advani were also very fascinating political jodi, but also collaborators plus rivals. And in the latter years of Vajpayee, this became more and more tense, his relationship. Sardar Patel and Nehru in the early years till Sardar Patel died. But often the people who act as the coterie may be, for instance, in the case of Indira Gandhi, Sanjay was there. Sanjay, particularly after 77, when she went out of power, she said in 1980 it was Sanjay who brought her back to power. He was a crutch, he was a comrade, he was the one responsible for her going out of power in 77. But apart from Sanjay, there was R.K. Dhawan who was an aide, there was Fotedar who was an aide. Those are the people who she was surrounded by. Even this Mohan Mikin family, Kapil Mohan, his older brother V.R. Mohan, those are the people she relied on, she trusted them. And that's why some of these people were huge repositories of information. When I started to write, these are the people I wanted to get to. Cabinet ministers would not give you the kind of information that these people would. So the need for a coterie, the person who did not have a coterie is Narasimha Rao. He didn't let his right hand know what his left hand was doing. Vishwanath Pratap Singh also, he used to say Indira Gandhi is my mentor. He also used people politically, but I don't think opened out to anyone or relied on anyone. He made his chessboard moves very smartly. So apart from those two, everybody's had a, coterie that. The first question of is the
Countryman kind of after 1980, Operation Blue Star.
Operation Blue Star, yeah. After 1980 and Sanjay Gandhi's death, many people at that time thought she might quit politics. It was such a shock to her. But she didn't quit politics. She got Rajiv, she started to groom Rajiv as her heir. And of course Arun Nehru and these, what were called the Baba Log at that time. But there was a lot of, it wasn't the Indira of earlier years. With the golden touch, the deft touch, the timing perfect. When she did abolition of privy purses, bank nationalization, Garibi Hatao, she turned leftwards and won 1970 elections so handsomely and got the better of the old guard. It wasn't that Indira in the 1980 to 84 period, and things just drifted. So Operation Blue Star also, Arun Nehru and Rajiv Gandhi and others around them, Arun Singh, they wanted her to move in, on the Punjab issue much earlier. But they said she dithered and dithered and dithered. How do I send the army earlier, into a place of worship? Till finally she had to do it. So I think it was a different period for her, where she was not her old self.
Thank you.
Put it near you. Yaman. Only this and religion, yes.
It is aloneness, which they have, like you said, weaponized and used it as Shakti. This is their power, the aloneness. And secondly, when you say religion, I'd like to know if you think religion has been a common factor amongst all these prime ministers and others, used successfully in their armor. And it's happening till today. And why? Cannot they win the votes without religion? Does the Indian mind have to be subjugated to religion before they decide? And here I use the word decide from the point of view of people. So what would you opine?
Yes, you know, you can say loneliness or aloneness or solitude. You know, like Nehru used solitude. Even before he died, he was in Dehradun. And he loved that place. And he didn't even want to go back, but then there were appointments, he went back, and then of course a day later he died. And that Robert Frost's beautiful poem, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep," were by his side. So yes, solitude. Vajpayee also used to say that, you know, the higher I went, you know, I felt maybe I made a mistake getting into politics. I should have stuck to writing poetry. I suppose it's the way you want to describe it, and each one of them would have liked to have described it. On the other part, what's the other part? Huh? Religion, very important part. You know, Nehru was very clear. He didn't believe in the use of religion. And his concept of secularism was even giving more than equal rights to the minorities who were very beleaguered after the partition, make them feel secure. Indira Gandhi used religion as a political tool. 1966, when she took over as Prime Minister, she took oath on the Constitution, not in the name of God. Later on, in 1980, for instance, when she took oath, it was in the name of God. Now, as I said, 1977 onwards, she turned very religious, and I don't think that was only a farce. I think she believed, she was religious. She believed in it. And also fear of what would happen to Sanjay Gandhi, what the Janata Party would do. She feared they would kill him. But she also used that as a political tool. Apart from having a personal faith, she used that as a political tool. Because the Hindus, she knew that the Muslims had left her in 1977 after the enforced sterilization of the emergency years. And she wanted to offset the loss of Muslims with the gain of Hindus. And she reached out, you know, the RSS reached out to her and she reached out to the RSS, knowing that RSS support, neutrality would help her. And it did, because she got the highest ever in terms of the seats. So Indira Gandhi was, as I say, very fascinating, very complex personality who essentially understood the nature of power. Probably more than many prime ministers. Narasimha Rao would have also, but more than many other prime ministers. And she understood statecraft. As she went into, she started off as a gungi gudiya. Loya called her a gungi gudiya. And Moraji said, this chokri. And remember, Nixon said, this old witch. So she got the better of all of them by the time she had ended up. But religion, then Rajiv also used religion. She got Rajiv to meet Bhaurav Deras, the brother of Balasaheb Deras, RSS chief, 3 times during 82 and 84, because she wanted, you know, it's a very fascinating thing that any leader would like to know about their opponents. It's not that she subscribed to the ideology of RSS, but she had her independent channels of information. What are they doing? What are they up to? What is their strategy? All that outside of IB's inflow to her. And therefore she got Rajiv also too. And they wanted to woo her. During the emergency, people were released. They also felt she was the Indira Gandhi sabse badi Hindu hai. That's what they said. They also felt about Rajiv Gandhi that he could be molded. Again, a Hindu chehra who could be molded. So when Ramayan telecast was not going through, this Bhaurav Deras had written to Rajiv. Rajiv was Prime Minister at that time. Chiranjeev Rajiv, agar Ramayan हिंदुस्तान में नहीं दिखाया जाएगा तो क्या न्यूयॉर्क में दिखाया जाएगा? So he then gave the go ahead for it, and H.K.L. Bhagat had warned him, अगर ये करोगे it will Hinduize the sentiment in the country and will find it very difficult to control it, which is what happened. But Rajiv too was naive. And up till mother was alive, I think he went along, and little after that. But after that, he maybe did not. But he met them. He met the RSS again when he was out of power, and he made a request to the RSS not to support the solution that Chandrasekhar had almost arrived at for your Ayodhya tangle. Now, that's not the only factor that would have influenced, why the thing went through and they withdrew support, Rajiv withdrew support, and that's a separate story. But using religion as a tool, and Advani is Rath Yatra. Advani used to say, I had no idea how religious the people of India are. उनके रथ पे आके वहाँ पूजा करते थे लोग आके. So very quickly political parties have realized religion as a weapon for communications, for influencing people, and then of course it's become bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course today, please.
Neerja ji, one of the most fascinating stories about the Prime Ministers behind the Prime Minister. It has been a wonderful psychological unraveling, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book, because you have brought to light incidents which we would never have known, by speaking not just to the people around them, but the people who were not actually in governance, but influenced them. And I would like to say that we have amongst us today, we are very, very honored to have amongst us, Manjula Mohan Singh. She is the daughter of Colonel K.R. Mohan. Am I right, Manjula? Please stand up, and can we acknowledge her?
My goodness, I have written about you.
Can you come?
It is amazing
you.
to have you here.
आगे आ जाओ मंजुला.
आपके बारे में मैंने इतना सुना है.
Can you come?
That you should be here.
Please come here, Manjula. So these are the descendants of those iconic people who were close to the Gandhi family, particularly Mrs. Gandhi. And I think we owe it to her. Let's all give her a hand. And I have to say, Neerja ji, that I can't wait to get my hands on the book and go through that. And I hope and really sincerely pray that next year, around the same time, if not earlier, you will be doing The Last Prime Minister. I'm saying last as in the one current Prime Minister. That's Freudian slip. And one last thing I'll say is he's not a loner. He is a narcissist, and he's a megalomaniac. He has used his loneness, to create a cult. And I give him full marks for that. Thank you.
Here, there at the end.
Ma'am, over here. As you know, in 2012, there was some talk of Manmohan Singh becoming the President of India.
Yes.
And his deputy, or his number 2, would become Prime Minister for 2 years. Of course, Mrs. Gandhi was completely against the idea, so naturally it did not happen. The question of that happening didn't even arise because of Mrs. Gandhi. But if it had happened, considering how unwell Manmohan Singh was in 2013 and 14, as you know, would it have made some difference in the 2014 election? Because the man who would have been Prime Minister had more political sense and had more allies to depend on. Let's not forget, when he became president, the Shiv Sena and the JDU voted for him. What do you think?
who made this comment, if only Rahul had entered the government at that time. And that when Dr. Manmohan Singh was very willing, had made an offer. And I do know this, that Rahul was very reluctant, and the UPA started to go to pieces when leaders in the UPA realized Rahul was not going to enter the government. And this is absolutely right. The plan was, or the buzz was, plan I can't say, the buzz was that he would take over as Prime Minister and Dr. Manmohan Singh would go to Rashtrapati Bhavan. But when that didn't seem to fructify, the plan, very serious plan, was that Rahul should enter government, take up a ministry like rural development, which had contact with ordinary people and be able to do things for them, and learn the ropes of administration. And this person close to Dr. Manmohan Singh, who told me very, very recently, if only he had done that, he would have gained huge experience, But of course, there was the flip side of the story. Had Rahul entered the government at that time, then he would have become the power center, not Dr. Manmohan Singh. No, but things would have been very difficult for Dr. Manmohan Singh, which were anyway difficult. And you're right, at that time Dr. Manmohan Singh's health was not good, and Sonia Gandhi's health during the second term was not good at all. So it was every department being run like a fiefdom during UPA 2, and leaks galore about scams and what was going wrong. So, and of course, the opposition went to town. So, in a sense, I often say that Narendra Modi's coming to power, it's really the second term visibly. Of course, things had started in the first term, but the visible going to pieces of the UPA. And I also say the guilty men of UPA who brought Narendra Modi to power in 2014. Men and women of UPA.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to be in a conversation with you, ma'am. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best with your book.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neerja ji, for a brilliant, brilliant session. Thank you so much. Like Nilima said, I really look forward to reading your book, which David has spoken of any number of times. So, definitely. On behalf of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to Neerja Chowdhury and Chandni Chopra for this fabulous conversation, which which all of us enjoyed thoroughly. I thank our distinguished associate Radisson Blu and the media partner Dainik Jagaran. Last but not least, thank you to our wonderful engaging attendees, some old and some new. Your presence here encourages us to conduct many more such sessions. Prabha Khaitan Foundation promotes cross-state cultural understanding and appreciation. We promote local artisans and their artifacts to show appreciation to our patrons and guests by endorsing their products. We encourage all to buy local products from local craftsmen in their development, encourage them. At all our events, local food is served, which means spreading awareness about more locally grown produce in the city and community. In this context, today we are pleased to felicitate with the ethnic dupatta of Ajrak. Ajrak is inspired by the Mughal era and its unique Muslim architectural elements. A strong sense of repeated geometrical patterns defines Ajrak's art form as symbolic of Sindhi culture and traditions, and is a unique form of block printing practiced by artisans of Ajrakpur and the Kutch region. Natural minerals and vegetable dyes are generally used for making Ajrak clothes. I would like to request Simi Sood, Director PR Marketing, to felicitate Neerja Chowdhury ji. Matches your sari, so I think. Thank you. Have a very good evening, all. And remember to take a complimentary copy of the autographed book of Neerja ji's that is here. And have a nice evening.